Check, 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 check. Okay, sorry folks. For some reason this thing is just wanting to go crazy here tonight. I click settings and it automatically opens up a new thing with a stream that has already started. Check, 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 check. Apparently, hold on. Yeah, I switched encoders there, or like, it's different versions of OBS basically is what this is. So, it's already okay, apparently all I gotta do is click on that and it pops up. I don't know why. Apparently, hold on. Okay, we're good on audio. Now, I don't know why this thing automatically went to that link. Okay, so that link is not working. Oh, man. See, this is what I try to do when I try to prep for a show, actually put some work into it. It ends up failing on me. Okay, let's do this here. Sorry, folks. I'm still getting used to this. I probably should have pre-recorded this one. But I wanted to do it live. So we're doing it live. So welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the podcast that the first row front row first seed, whatever it is. I have the link up here. I don't remember what I'm sorry. Boston Nooga, that's BOSTONNOOGA on Twitter. He did a podcast with it's row 1 seat 1. There it is. I'll even put a link to it in the description here, where you can listen to part 2 of, well, actually, this is part 1, and then they follow it up with part 2. Let me see here. He did an interview with, well, actually, here, I'll do this. I'll just take you straight. I'll put a link in the description to, let me see here. I'll put a link down there in the description real quick. You may have to refresh your page. And he talked to Brad, and I gave my thoughts on part 1 already. He did that a little 2-part interview. He split it up into 2 parts. And he was a very candid conversation, I thought. Let me see here. There we go. That ain't doing nothing. Okay. By the way, I do have the chat fired up here. If you guys want to chat with me, go ahead and put that in there. And I'll try to read as many of them or react to as many of them as I can. There was a lot of things that came out in this podcast, and a lot of things that kind of opened my mind and opened my horizons on things. But yeah, it's definitely opened up my eyes onto what actually went down at the end, what went down during, because you get it from one side. There's always that one side that you get, and there's always that one-sidedness that you, and quite frankly, I didn't know the other side of the situation, the other side of the grass, so to speak, because I wasn't told. Nobody was saying anything from Grant and Brad's point of view, nor should they have had to. They didn't have to. It's none of our business, quite frankly, but I'm kind of glad that they kind of peeled back the curtain a little bit here with this interview. It was amazing to me to know that Worldwide probably could have started a good 2 to 3 years before it did, had they had the gumption to put it on YouTube. And the fact that Grant was editing all those shows and had put together years and years of content only to have it just sitting and not being used. That's really, really crazy when you think about it. And this is this is not a knock on Brad, and it's not a knock on Grant, but it's from the owner's point of view, the fact that it took a fan to sit there and say, hey, we need a regular upload schedule. We need to make this into something, especially when when the guy putting the money to it goes, I want to be the darling of the internet. It's just a lot of crazy stuff came out in these two podcast, folks. You really need to go listen to them after we get done here, if you haven't done so already. We're also going to make my pick for the wrestler of the decade here before we get out of here, and that's going to surprise some people. It really is going to surprise some people. I think that the main thing that caught me was the stuff in part 2. Podcast, folks. Sorry, I had to check that audio level. The stuff that came out in part 2 really, really shocked me from a point of the way Brad was talking, it's almost like he wanted to set up a territory of sorts. And that so would have worked. In my mind, it so would have worked. But when you have people who are so old school in thought, and I'll get to this in a minute. I'll get to some examples here in a minute. 'Cause here's what I think happened, and I'm probably totally off the mark here, but this is what I surmise from the whole kerfluffle, the whole thing, pretty much. From what I'm trying to think of the best way to put this without digging a grave here. It sounded like Brad wanted to set up this little territory system. You have CWF, you have Nova Pro, Modern Vintage, maybe PWX could have gotten in on it. And on paper, it sounds like a very good idea. Sending wrestlers from CWF up to Nova Pro to CWF. Modern Vintage runs in the same arena using the CWF talent, maybe bringing in talent of their own. I think the one show that they ran, in one of the shows that they ran in that building that I didn't get a chance to go to, they had Michael Elgin on it. So, you have that, and it was a chance, and it was what CWF needed, I think. You got a guy like Kane Justice out there who I'm sitting here going, here's your Kurt Angle. And everybody around me saying, nah, he's not that seasoned yet. What sounds to me like Stuttsy was trying to do is find a way to get people seasoned. Try to find a way to get people past the front door. And make it to where they didn't have to work in front of the same people filling the front row every goddamn time you open the building. Myself included. There's only so many times you can work in front of the Harris family before you have to move on. Find a new audience a little bit. And it sounds like Brad and Grant, their finger was on the pulse, man. Even though that they say that they were burnt out, You know, Grant said he was burnt out 2 years before all this shit went down, and to me it's like, dude, y'all were just hitting your stride, kind of. The fact that we have, a shoestring budget, people not wanting to sink money into it, that's well and good. That's fine. I get it. I'm sure everybody, I'm sure Danny and Jeff and everybody else, whoever had money in the business, had more things to worry about than pro wrestling. I get it. But I always felt like if you just, like Brad even says, if you could just get the product in front of a different audience, expand it out there. How can you be the darlings of the internet when you won't go to the internet? And that fan con that they did in 2017, I think that's where some really good interviews came out of that, which are on this channel. They had a damn good sit down with Brad and Grant, that whole Q&A. But what it sounded like was, hey, we're fine and comfortable with taking this only so far. And the second Brad tried to make moves behind the scenes, it sounds like Danny and Jeff were like, hold on. And they pulled the plug. Even Brad says it in the podcast. I fell out of favor politically, and that's where the thing started to go downhill. So he's wanting to create this territory system. And then, you go back to the PW Torch article Bruce Mitchell wrote. And they discovered that this guy, let me see here. I have the article up here. I'm trying to sit here and think of it here, see here and look at it here. The guy had been in and out of jail since he was 19 years old. It says that they had a copy of this rap sheet on this guy. And they saw that as letting a rooster in the hen or letting a wolf in the hen house, which to me, they're so old school that they were like, okay, on one hand you're telling us to trust this guy, and on the other hand, we got a rap sheet here, and it's not, I get where Jeff and Danny are coming from, but looking back on it now, the way hindsight is 20/20, of course. But it looked like Brad was trying to set something up that could have been really, really good for the talent and really, really good for CWF. But this reputation, it sounded like, preceded him. So it's like, you go back and it's funny how they talk about how Brad talks about that Chip Day Trevor Lee match as the peak of his creative flow in the company, and his creative juices in the company peaked right there, because I thought that was just the beginning. And how we championed the match, but we really didn't champion the show. I championed both, at least from my point of view. I championed both. Because I saw... I saw, hell, the official, unofficial CWF Mid-Atlantic After Show came as a result of that match. Because I went to my boys, AC, and I went to Jeff Edwards, cheap plug. Go check out Blading for Truth. It's an awesome YouTube channel. Just Blading for Truth, it'll pop right up. Just do a search there, folks, after you get done listening for me. Really good stuff on that channel. But me and Jeff was so, AC, who is accustomed to that Northeast wrestling up there. Apparently that's where everybody from Ring of Honor comes from, is Northeast wrestling. So he's so enamored with it, he's like, I've seen better. But Jeff took a look at it and goes, yeah, I've seen better, but goddamn, this is actually pretty damn good. It takes me back to what I used to watch. It's studio wrestling. It's old school wrestling. Everything makes sense. Yeah, not everything is a damn, they didn't have the Midas touch on everything. But for the most part, 9 times out of 10, everything made sense with that company. And I love that goddamn booking. And yes, maybe I was quick to jump on the bandwagon at the end of that damn year when Stuttsy got fired. And Stuttsy in that podcast claims to this day that there is no more, that he wasn't inappropriate behavior. He claims that he never proposed, Bruce Mitchell in this article, Bruce says that he proposed that a CWF employee engage in sexual activity for money, something she turned down, and Stutts has subsequently admitted. When did he didn't admit this to us. Hell, he says in this podcast that nothing of that sort ever happened. So I kind of, it's still blurred lines of who you want to believe and whose side you want to be on and whose side you don't want to be on. But after several things come out in this podcast and other things I've seen, the guy from America, all right, I'll give you a prime example of them not wanting to partner with anybody, okay, unless they were partners with them. And yes, maybe the AWA thing kind of burnt them on trusting people and kind of diminished their trust. Like the FanCon thing, I heard that JB and Johnny P had to really push Jeff and Danny to get that done. Had to really, really, really butter them up on the idea. So when you have two promoters who really don't want to trust anybody, that it sounds like they've been burnt in the past, and then we want somebody to come in and run our building, but yet Shakara runs that building. Queens of Combat ran that building. I just don't get it. I mean, and the guy from American Lucha Designs, I think my memory is shit. I'm sorry, dude. I can't remember your freaking name, and it sucks because we sat there side by side at some of those damn shows together. But I haven't chatted with him. I want to say his name was Brian. He sat there and started his own promotion. He started American Lucha Pro Wrestling, I think it was. Let me see here. Trying to find it, but and which I can't even find the damn name there now. It was American Lucha Designs. I know that because I have one of their T-shirts. I just wore it the other day. But when you have them trying to open up their own promotion, and they're just going to run Chapel Hill and places like that. And I even asked the guy, I said, dude, did you tell CWF that you're running? And he said, yeah. And I was like, how'd they take it? And he says, Jeff was pissed. Jeff's whole thing was, you're going to steal my business away from me. They didn't want to let anybody in. They were too scared. Dude, I'm sorry, but if the booking would have been good, I would still be going to your shows. Other promotions are not the reason why I stopped going. It was the booking and the way I saw things going. And now, after all this time, they made a mistake, and I'm not too proud to sit here and admit I made a fucking mistake, man. Yes, I got behind that promotion. Yeah, they did the whole CWF Strong thing with the blue ribbon and domestic violence, or sexual assault and all, whatever it was. But goddamn, man, it's just a cluster. It just ended up being a total cluster. That's what it sounds like. But yeah, Row One Seat One podcast. Check that out. It's very good. It's a very good 2-part interview. To hear that Grant talking about how he was that weekend, that FanCon weekend, man. That was the weekend where it's like talk about how they made it. And I'll say it right now, that Rumble is probably the best battle royal I've ever seen in my life to this day. Chip Day and Trevor Lee is one of my matches of the decade. So if I had to have a decade list for matches, that's one of them. That crowd, man. And part of it is that they didn't want to advertise that really. The fucking Harris family and all those people who filled up that front row right there at the front of the damn ring, they're going to come every week regardless of whether you're killing puppies or not. You had them. And Brad blames himself for the house being bad. Some weeks after that match. You can't have a full house unless you put some money into advertising, print some flyers, put them around Greensboro, Chapel Hill, High Point, places like that. And looking back on it, man, Brad, if you're listening to this, you shouldn't be so fucking hard on yourself. Because the latter half of that year, like around the tag tournament, or after that tag tournament, y'all were cooking. Yeah, there'd be some weeks where you walk in there and, like the week after the Rumble. The week after the Rumble when they ran that show after the Rumble. And it was like maybe 20, 30 people in there. You're going to have weeks like that. Don't beat yourself up over it. You did killer business with that Rumble. And Battlecade, oh my God. The first Battlecade I went to, which was the Battlecade X7, I want to say it was. So 3 years ago, 16. Because I found them in late 2015. I took the majority of 16 and didn't go to their shows. And the latter half of 16 is when I really started getting into it. Because I didn't miss a show in 2017. But that Battlecade, man, a fart in that building would have given you a concussion. It was so packed. They were having to fucking find places for chairs and standing room only in the back. This is before they built that stupid Coronado suite. That was another thing. They built this freaking Coronado Cup suite or whatever that they're charging $500 for people to rent out. Nobody you had maybe, I think, 2 families rent that damn thing out, and I think they were friends of Jeff's or Danny's or whatever the case may be. Nobody's going to pay that much to sit there and watch indie wrestling. Nowadays, they probably would for like a PWG or something like that, but nobody was going to pay that much to sit there in a faux leather recliner and watch wrestling and eat Italian food or subs or whatever. That right there, man, you could have fit 5 more rows of seats in that damn place and gotten your money's worth. Half the time, freaking Ethan Alexander Sharpie, I love you, Sharpie. Shout out to Ethan Alexander Sharp. I wore his t-shirt the other day when I was working, as a matter of fact. Half the time, fucking, Sharpie's dad and Pops, everybody else who worked in the production, they'd end up sitting there in the Coronado suite. They didn't make a goddamn dime off that thing. And then when I hear, after Brad and them got fired and they let the American Lucha guys in, they kind of acknowledged me, hey, thanks for supporting us, whatever the case may be, and I was glad to do it at the time. And then I see the booking or where they're going with the booking, and I'm just like, God damn. That title should have been, no offense to Trevor Lee. Trevor Lee's a beast. And people could say Trevor's going to lose that title whenever he's good and well ready to. Well, I'm sorry. If you're the booker and you're the boss, that title should have been off Trevor Lee a year before it happened. A year before he finally got signed, it should have been off of him a year before then. I firmly believe that. Everybody else that I talked to believed it as well. Hell, half the time the only reason why people stuck around until Trevor left is because they wanted to see who he would drop the title to. And then when he didn't drop the title at all, it kind of seemed like a major letdown. So if Grant's listening, thank you for doing that interview. Stutzy, if you're listening, I doubt he is. Thank you for doing that interview. It opened up my eyes. It opened up a lot of people's eyes, man. And it's well, yeah, Stutzy blocked me on Twitter, but still, it's, and he has good reason. I wasn't, in his eyes, I was probably a stupid asshole Mark who's just traveling to the shows and doing a shitty radio show. And part of me wanted to be more than that in his eyes, because it's like I had Grant's approval. I had Jeff and Danny. Jeff and Danny probably didn't really realize what was going on, but they knew I was there. And they said hey to me and whatever, and glad you're here, whatever case may be. The only guy's approval I didn't really have was Stutzy. And I wanted that approval, But, again, who the fuck am I? And I did that podcast the night that it came out that Stutzy was gone. Maybe I shouldn't have. Looking back on it, hindsight again. I probably shouldn't have said anything. I probably shouldn't have done anything. I probably should have kept my mouth shut. I remember Eric Andrews coming on that night. That probably wasn't the best thing for me to have him, put him on the air. I would probably do a lot of things different. I'd probably want to get the full story before I go out there and, mouth off. But, the one guy whose approval I really wanted and didn't get was Stutzy's. But, again, I'm just a stupid Mark doing a fucking after show for them. And it's... I love doing that after show. The only reason why I stopped doing the after show was because I had to fucking, what do they say, cowboy up and go get my ass a job. I had to go back out on the road. I tried to keep up with it on Twitch, and Grant was talking, that's another thing. The production value of it just went to shit. They tried to, I believe the guy from American Lucha Designs tried to hook them up with a guy, and I met the guy sitting there front row at one of the shows, and they hand him 4 thumbsticks from 4 different cameras, and it's just, oh my God. The show became actually unwatchable. Then they decided to do their own after show after I faded out. Smart idea. It was a real smart idea. I just don't like the idea of worked after shows, which is why shit like what WWE used to do never worked. That whole after show, pre-show, post-show, whatever the case may be, it doesn't work in wrestling. It really doesn't. Unless you're airing video packages to hype it up, and good video packages. But I honestly, I listened to these 2 parts and I came away thinking maybe I owe those 2 guys a fucking apology, That's what my way of thinking is that maybe, I owe Grant and Brad an apology. I am glad to see that both those guys have gotten back on their feet. Grant's doing stuff for the ACC network and Brad's working for AML. Hell, I might even go to an AML show, sometime within the next year. I need to. They don't run any further away from me than CWF did. They run in Winston-Salem. It's not that far away from me. But I just felt like I just felt like they, I felt kind of dirty for the way I acted after listening to these two podcasts. And you know what? Maybe I deserve to feel that guilt and that feeling. Maybe I deserve it. Maybe I acted like a teetotal dickhead. All I could say is, hell, I even did a damn video a while back during the summer. This past summer, saying maybe they need to ask Stutts to come back. I'm not saying it could have saved the promotion, but could have been a hell of a lot better than what it was. And like Grant said, I can't go back to the way the booking used to be. And him saying 2 years beforehand, dude, if you go anywhere, I got to go too. I can't say I blame him now. And I miss going to that damn building. I miss seeing Brad. I miss seeing Grant. I mean, hell, I'll never forget the first time I went. I talked to Grant and said, yeah, I'm going. Cool, I'll see you there. And then Grant invites me to stay after the show. And I was like, holy shit. That was a hell of a feeling. My little podcast is getting these guys' attention. And again, the one guy's approval that I wanted, I ended up not getting. And that's selfish of me. That's real selfish of me to say, but it's how I feel. It's how I feel. And maybe my selfishness is why the man has heat with me. I mean, again, who am I? I'm probably a pissant in his life, and rightfully so. Who the fuck is Joe White, But maybe I'll start paying attention to AML more now that Stutsy's there. I miss hearing, oh God, I miss the oh God and his commentary. I miss the man's booking. I missed that whole time. It's probably never coming back. So go check that out there. It's row 1, seat 1 over at Place to Be Nation. Parts 1 and 2 are up. Check them out. They're damn... I must have listened to both of them 3 times. That whole thing. It's something that you want to go back and pay attention to. And if you were there for that ending, and if you were there for that fan con and that tag team tournament, the fun thing about that tag tournament was I went to, I believe it was night 2, that Saturday show, because they couldn't run on Sundays because of that stupid fucking church next door to them. Which I have a feeling that's the reason why they're not in that building anymore. There's a really good theory that the church bought that building and that's why. But who knows? Well, I guess we'll never know now. But they had like a little miniature fan fest before that night 2 of that Cronodle Cup. They had like White Mike was wrestling on that show, and they had, the Carnies were there, and they even had like a WWF WrestleFest video game arcade cabinet set up, and the Ducklings were there selling their merch, and the kids were around the ring. It was just a really good time. And then you had that Chip Day Trevor Lee match, and it was like, man, the local yokels didn't really get it, but the majority of the people from outside the company got it, and I was a stupid idiot calling them Smark Row and all that. That was stupid of me to say, looking back on it. Because those were the guys that were trying to help get the damn word of the promotion out there. But it always seemed to me like the local crowd was always looking at, who are these guys coming from up north and back out west and all this. They didn't care. That local crowd that would have showed up every damn week, they didn't care. And having to balance that, they talk about that in that podcast, having to balance catering to the local fans and then catering to the internet. I think they should have, in hindsight, again, hindsight's 2020, they should have been worrying about the internet people Because those local guys, they're going to show up whether they're going to show up regardless. They've already got their tickets bought probably online. Let's look at Wrestler of the Decade, shall we? Wrestler of the Decade 2019. I'm going from 2010 to 2019. And my pick is probably going to surprise a lot of you guys. My pick for Wrestler of the Decade is actually Wrestlers of the Decade, and that's the Young Bucks. As much as I hate to say it, it's the Young Bucks. You look at when they started the year off with TNA. December 26, 2009, Dixie Carter announces that she signed the Young Bucks to a contract. The contract 1 year long. They renamed them. Russo renamed it the Generation Me. They had no idea how to book these guys. They make their debut on the January 14th, 2010 episode of Impact. They defeated the Motor City Machine Guns in their debut. Then they go from TNA, they float around the Indies, PWG, and then they go to New Japan. They help with the Bullet Club. They help get that stable on the map. Let's face it, New Japan and this whole indie boom that we saw and this whole thing of, wrestling now would not be where it is without Matt and Nick. Do I enjoy the body of work? No, but you got to admit at the end of the day, they lit the brush fire. Without them, we don't get Cody, and we don't get, well, we would have gotten Cody, but not to that extent. We wouldn't have gotten Cody over in Japan. We wouldn't get Cody in Ring of Honor. We wouldn't have AEW. We wouldn't have this wrestling war. I don't think Kenny Omega would be as popular as he is without the Young Bucks. Early 2016, they formed the Elite after kicking AJ Styles out of the Bullet Club. And they go on that long reign, man, from 2016 all the way through 2018. They ended up moving to the heavyweight tag division in 2018. That match that they had at Strong Style Evolved in Long Beach with the Golden Lovers was freaking amazing. And then you go to All In. They the Young Bucks and Cody proving Dave Meltzer wrong. The Young Bucks then team up with Kota Ibushi at All In to go up against Bandito, Phoenix, and Mysterio, which gets cut short because of Marty Scurll going over in his match. And I've given them a lot of shit. I mean, I've been brutal to the Young Bucks and Omega on this channel. I'm not big fans of theirs. I'll be the first one to admit it. The style of wrestling and the no selling and the no logic, and I'm selling the leg 1 minute and then doing flips and kicks with it the next minute is just perplexing to me. And this whole excuse that Dave Meltzer uses of, well, the crowd pops for it. That's not an excuse. That doesn't mean it's right. They do the Being the Elite with over 400,000 YouTube subscribers now. It's hard to, I don't want to admit it, but I have to admit it. These two guys are wrestlers of the decade. If it wasn't for these two guys, wrestling would not be what it is right now. Their work at PWG is just paramount. Their work overseas in New Japan is just amazing. When you think about what they accomplished there and what they did to the industry. Pro Wrestling Tees and the way they took and made their brand, and they got a fan base. Whether I like it or not, they got a fucking fan base. They got their group of leeches. So it's amazing how 2 guys came in and just lit that brush fire. So it's really amazing. It's really amazing. But that's my Young Bucks. To me, are wrestlers of the decade. You can't have one. There is no one wrestler. It's the Young Bucks, guys. As much as I hate to admit it, it's the Young Bucks. That's going to do it for me again, today. I just wanted to get some thoughts out about that CWF podcast. It was a great listen. Thank you, Ben, for doing that. Thank you, Grant and Stuttsy, for doing it. I really appreciate, I appreciate it as a fan of CWF. It kind of, if the promotion is going to go out of business, aside from Danny and Jeff doing an interview giving their point of view, which you're never going to freaking hear. And this makes a lot of sense. Brad talking about that tournament or that territory system, that network he wanted to set up and getting shot down on it. And I think them getting that rap sheet of that one guy was like their smoking gun. That was the bullet in the smoking gun. That was all the ammo they needed. Which to me is, I can understand it, but at the same time, it's like, okay, did you have to fire the guy over that? Could you say, hey, you need to cut ties with this guy, or hey, this guy is not running our building, this guy's not using our talent? Which I don't see how you could control that, but, I compared it a lot to the Von Erichs. All Fritz cared about was giving his boys a healthy place to work. At the end of the day, that's all that it seemed like CWF top management wanted. We don't need anybody else. We don't need to branch out of Texas. We don't need to branch out of Gibsonville. As long as we got a place for our boys to work, that's all we need. Unfortunately, back then, it didn't work. Eventually, it didn't work for Texas. It's not going to work for CWF. Not when you have people like an Eric Royal and a Roy Wilkins and a Kane Justice and a Nick Richards. It's just not going to, Chet Sterling. It's not going to. They needed to branch out. They needed that territory system. They needed that network. And now we'll never have it. And it flat out sucks. It flat out sucks. I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Hopefully I didn't blabber on too much, but it's hard for me to convey into words how I'm feeling right now, because I don't know. If I had to rewind time, I probably wouldn't have done what I did. And it sucks. But I am thankful for those that 1 year of after shows that I did. They're on the channel if you want to go back to watch them, listen to them. I kind of have an idea for a future show. If you're a CWF fan, you may want to stay tuned. I have an idea for a show that I want to do. Not sure how many people would chip in and do it with me. But it's an idea that I'm floating around. We'll see what happens. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and listening. The next show, we're going to have a little bit of gaming stuff. The watch along for this Wednesday is going to be NXT. NXT beat. Well, let's get into it here. They beat AEW in the ratings, but not in people 18 to 49, and which is what everybody goes to. I don't get why. A ratings win is a ratings win, regardless of the demographic. Now, if you want to break it up into demographics, yes, AEW won the night. But when you look at it overall, NXT kind of kicked their ass, guys. Hunter Collins, hello, how you doing, sir? Thank you for joining us here this evening. But NXT did 810,000 people. AEW does 663,000. It's a big, Wednesday before Thanksgiving, biggest travel day of the year. It's going to happen. They're going to take a dip. It's not that big of a dip, though. They lost 100,000 viewers, NXT did, from last week to this week. AEW lost almost 200,000 viewers. Well, they did lose 200,000 viewers. I'm wondering what they're going to do on Christmas this year. Because Wednesday is Christmas Day this year. It's 3 weeks from this coming Wednesday. I think they're going to run best ofs or something. The good idea, if AEW is smart, the good idea would be to air their last pay-per-view or something, but I doubt they could ever air that on TV. Plus TBS and TNT, you know what they do on Christmas? They do 24 hours of A Christmas Story. They've been doing it for years. It's not going to stop. So I'll be watching AEW this week. I'm going to try to, split the watch-alongs up. 1 week I'll do NXT. The next week I'll do AEW. You won't find last week's watch-along here on the channel because of the fact that my internet decided to crash and burn. But I'll be with you this Wednesday night at 7:30. Other news we have today, the WWE 2K series is in jeopardy, folks. Justin Leeper, a former WWE SmackDown vs. Raw video game series writer, discussed the criticism of the WWE 2K game and the future of the series. He says 2K and the people within it are trying to distance themselves from it. I've heard about double-digit people who were on the team who have just quit. They have left for other stuff. They're just quit because, man, I don't want this stink on me anymore. Well, you're responsible for the stink. 2K is responsible for the stink. WWE is responsible for it because they got to have a deadline. They got to have a video game every year. Ukes quit because it wasn't fun for them anymore. I said this when 2K first picked up the freaking license all those years ago. They're going to turn it into just like NBA 2K, and damn if they have it with these storylines of you being a guy on the road and living in your van or whatever the case may be. Stop. This guy, Justin Leeper, whatever it is, he added 2K20 selling poorly. It's doing poorly all around. That's because nobody's buying your microtransactions, pal. That means the budget's going to be cut. It means 2K21 is going to have to be made for less money to fix things, innovate, and now there's about 10 less people working on the team. As you can tell, the outlook for 2K21 is not good. 10 people quitting a dev team? That puts a hamper on things. I can guarantee you next year we're going to get 2K20, but with a different story mode, different showcase, and that's it. Everything else is going to be the same. That's the only thing that they can do. Whatever Ukes is working on, I hope it's the AEW video game. I really do. I would love to see EA get back in the game. Yeah, they had those two shitty WCW games back in the day. Mayhem wasn't that bad. Backstage Assault sucked. Hell, I like to see THQ Nordic get back in the game. There's going to come a time, though, where WWE is going to look at these video game numbers and they're going to they're going to pull their licensing agreement away from 2K, if possible. I don't want to see any more 2K crap anyway. It's the same. I haven't bought the game the last 2 years for this reason. It's the same shit year after year after year. It's the same. Polish a turd. It's still a turd, guys. You can only do so much with it. a wrestling game before you have to totally rethink it. You have to go right back to the well. You have to scrap everything and start from scratch. And if that means that the next year you don't come out with a video game, oh well. Maybe you skip a year. Maybe you skip it, next year and say, okay, or this year, maybe you skip 2020 and go, okay, we're going to save our resources and we're going to pull it together and we're going to put it out on PS5 and it's going to be better than ever. We're going to totally start from the ground up. We're going to give people general manager mode back and all this shit, which universe mode is basically general manager mode, people. So those of you clamoring for general manager mode to return to these video games, that should be the least of your worries. I hadn't bought the game for 2 goddamn years, and I don't plan on buying it until they learn from their mistakes, until they stop giving us the same crap. I'm sick and tired of showcase mode. I was so glad that it was not included last year, and everybody's, where's showcase mode? Where's showcase? I don't want to recreate shit from the past anymore. I don't want to do QTEs that go into videos of them recreating shit that happened at WrestleMania 20 or WrestleMania 15. I'm so sick of the let's recreate history bullshit. I don't like that whole deal with the bump in the night thing of let's wrestle in a swamp. Let's wrestle here. No, you want to... THQ tried that with Nitro. Like, let's have the Killer Bee wrestle. And, we're going to put the entire development team in there as wrestlers. And we're going to have them wrestle in a jazz club where when the character stands still, they do the freaking zoot suit dance or whatever. It's wrestling. It's not Mortal Kombat. We don't need to be wrestling in Shaolin temples and swamps and stuff. So does this strike me as a surprise for the 2K development team? 10 people walking off the development team, the budget's going to get cut and everything like that? Nope, doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, I want them to be able to have to find a new publisher. Don't get me wrong, I like some of Take-Two Interactive stuff, man. Rockstar Games is a branch of Take-Two Interactive, and I don't think Rockstar, Red Dead Redemption 2, love that game. Grand Theft Auto 5 is probably my game of the decade. But they released 2K, they released 2K21 way too early. That's WWE's fault. They took a bogus story mode on it. It's so bad. My kid spent his own money and bought the $80 version of that game that came with all the the deluxe version. And he likes it, but that's because he doesn't know any better. He's 10. At 10 years old, did any of us care about fucking frame rate? No. And everybody online is making videos of them laughing at the glitches. That's not funny, it's sad. It's just sad. And people are out there going, why can't they just give us No Mercy? Guys, because it's a different era. No Mercy's gone. Why would you want them to... it was a good game. But within all the advances in video games, like you look at games like Death Stranding and Star Wars and all this... That's the potential that these games have. And for some reason, 2K just can't get it right because they want to make their money. When people go, it's doing poorly all around. All around means nobody's buying the microtransactions. So it's losing money because we thought that they would buy fake fucking virtual currency to buy stuff. It's stupid. That's going to do it for me tonight, folks. You've been taking it from pillar to post. We'll see you back here Wednesday night for the watch along. We're watching AEW this week. And we'll see you down the road.